But you know, and of course the not so subtle implication is that like Trump's some bigot for not wanting you know, people coming up through the US Mexican border. And I I don't know. It's like, okay, fine. Fine. All right, I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to it. I do think that there's this weird dynamic where a lot of people, even on, say, like Fox News, they won't admit what the true concern about immigration is. That a lot of people, I think, did vote for Donald Trump for. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but there sure are a whole lot of people who voted for Donald Trump for this reason, okay? The thing that MSNBC brags about, the browning of America and the changing of the racial demographics in America, nobody here ever voted on that. Nobody ever decided they wanted America to become a majority Hispanic country. And I think actually a lot of people don't. They don't want that to happen in America. So on one side, you should have them, like they almost should, you would want them to be more honest and just be like straight up like, yeah, we don't want America to become a Hispanic country. How about that? We don't want that. We don't want that to be the case. We want to maintain the demographics we have. We don't want them to drastically change. And on the other side, instead of just screaming racist when somebody says that, maybe you actually have to argue why that is a good thing. Maybe. I don't know. It's like nobody, this is the crazy thing where you have these subjects where nobody's allowed to fucking talk. So what happens is Fox News speaks in codes, and they're like, you know, well, we don't care about legal immigration, but we just care about illegal immigration or blah, 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 or whatever, you know? And then the left still calls them racist for saying that. And then they're like, but there's nothing racist about what I said. So what's the problem? And no one can just have an honest conversation. Because, okay, is it a little bit bigoted to say you don't want America to become a majority Hispanic nation? Sure, maybe. Does that mean it's wrong? Not necessarily. Like, prejudice is appropriate at certain points. And I'm just saying, like, my take on this, which I've shared many times on the show, is like, I don't know. I'm willing to ask the question and say, okay, so what, you know, when people on MSNBC or people at, you know, The Nation or wherever, they'll be like, oh, we're going to become a majority minority and then a majority Hispanic nation within the next couple decades. Isn't that wonderful? It's like, okay, why? Why is that necessarily wonderful? I mean, you tell me what majority Hispanic nation is doing so great that we wish we were like them. By your own standards, by the left-wing standards, you tell me what majority Hispanic nation is like really great on gay rights and women's rights, and they have transgender bathrooms and universal health care and like all these things. Because last I checked, every time the left wing gives an example of a country that they love so much, it's fucking Sweden or Denmark or Norway. Those are the countries they always go, well, look at all the women's maternity leave and health care and minimum wage and all this stuff, right? Like those are the countries you like. You have to go to the most densely white countries in the world to find the country that you want to be like. So is it not fair? Now, I am not one of these like identitarian race realist guys. I'm not. I don't personally, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't really believe it's because of the brownness of their skin or something genetically inherent to Hispanics. I actually tend to think culture is much more important than that. But then that begs the next question, which is like, are they going to adapt our culture if they come over here or not? I mean, if you were to suggest that they adopt our culture, you're basically called a Nazi. So how is this going to work? Why is this good? It's a pretty major, profound change in the country, and no one's allowed to just talk about it. So we're all just talking about, you know, it's like there's kind of this weird thing where Trump's like, no, we want the wall, and there's a wink and a nod. You know what we're talking about here. And then the left is like, he's a Nazi, wink and a nod. You know what we're talking about here. And really, it seems like there's just a bunch of people who don't like the demographic changes on one side and a bunch of people on the other side who, well, you kind of have the top who wants the votes, like the actual politician who wants to import generations of voters for them. And then you have the people at the bottom who are just so indoctrinated and obsessed with this. Everything is racist. That anything that's said against a brown person, you know, anything that's not for them, like it's basically like, well, yeah, of course. if they want to come here, we should all just like get out of our homes and give it to them because our narrative's been overrepresented and blah, 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 or whatever. I don't know. Just seems like we should be able to have an honest conversation about this. But a government shutdown is a good second best. So I'll take that. Did you see the thing with this guy, Steve King?
I read the article, yeah.
It's now let me just ask you, because maybe I'm like missing something here. What was your take?
I didn't really have a strong take on it other than it seemed like more of them just trying to affiliate Trump with a racist and just kind of, it's all about just drawing that affiliations, just trying to somehow peg Trump as being in line with this guy who's a racist. And so therefore this whole movement, everything that really got Trump into power is just racist white America.
Right.
That like finally Trump is the person who empowers because they even said that within the article. It was all about these Midwest towns that have these, that they've been trying to do this his entire presidency, say that really the only reason he's in power is because there's so many white racists that finally got a person that they felt represented them. And I don't think that's true.
No, me neither. And in fact, it's like, look, here's the truth, okay? People kind of suck. Like anywhere you go, you can find your problems with what the groups of people are. You know, people have bad qualities. But it does seem that only the microscope gets put over white people. Like those are the only ones we're allowed to judge. This is a point that a lot of people make, but I do think it's a fair point that you know, nobody ever seems to be morally outraged over Japan's immigration policy. Like Japan, it's incredibly hard to get into. They maintain their demographics. They are not into diversity in Japan. Do not have a diverse country. The country is Japanese. It's like, okay, so is that horrible and racist too? Or is it only white people who are capable of being horrible and racist? Because if you look at things that way, it's kind of like if the guys on Fox News wanted to say only terrorism is defined as a Muslim committing an act of violence, and then they turned around and said, look at all this evidence that Muslims commit all the terrorism. Anyone on the left would very quickly be like, well, no, because you've defined that into the definition. So it doesn't mean anything if you have examples of Muslim terrorism, if you're defining terrorism as something Muslims do. So this is what the left's done with racism. And they will openly tell you that other races can't be racist. So black people can't be racist. Only white people can be racist because racism equals, you know, power and privilege and bigotry combined or something like that. And then they're shocked when there's examples of white racism. It's like, okay, like if you want to have a fair conversation about this and say like, hey, are there some bigot? If you go into a white town in the Midwest or, you know, wherever, some all white area, will you find any views about people of different races that are less than positive? Like, sure, I'm sure you will. However, if you go into some fucking all black neighborhood, what are the views going to be of other races there? Oh, yeah, very similar. Like, if you go into fucking Chinatown and you talk to them about white people or black people, I'm sure it's not all sunshine and roses. I'm sure they've got some things to say too. Like, it's like, you know, are you telling me that if I just walk around some all black neighborhood that it's a guarantee that I won't experience any discrimination while I'm there? Again, we're not allowed to have a conversation about any of this stuff. And to me, that was more or less what the Steve King thing just kind of solidified to me. I agree with you completely that they're trying to lump Trump into this. Yes, Trump is a secret Nazi. Okay, or whatever. Or a Klansman, because now those are the same thing, right? Yeah. Klansmen and Nazis, they were the exact same thing. Whatever. It's like all these things, like, it's all just so ridiculous.
I also, did you see a little bit of his speech that he made at C-SPAN? What's the guy's name? Stephen King?
Stephen King on the House floor.
Yeah, did you see that?
Yes, I did.
So
I don't know if I watched the whole thing, but
yeah,
I saw some
neither
clips
did I.
from it.
He was kind of boring to listen to.
Yeah.
But his overall claim of saying, I think we should start policing some of the language that's used in politics in terms of throwing around words like racist, it doesn't allow us to have real conversations about policy or what's best for the country. That it's polluting the ability to even have, you know, a political environment or structure, a reasonable conversation. And I think that's fair.
Yeah, well, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, it seems to me that the terms sexist and racist got overused so much that they lost all their fucking meaning because they were just said so much. So now we've gone to white supremacist, Nazi, fascist. You know, it's like they've really had to dig deep in these terms, but they don't seem like nobody, or I shouldn't say nobody, but it seems like the vast majority of the people who use these terms don't realize that they're taking away from the significance of the term. Like if everyone you disagree with is a fascist, then all of a sudden a fascist doesn't really seem to be that bad of a thing. You know? It's like the same thing where they would call, you know, it was like Mitt Romney was called sexist and racist. So when Donald Trump came out, you need something a little bit more than that, right? It can't just be the same thing you would say about any other Republican. There's got to be the next level. So now it's like, you know, Nazi or something like that. But again, if Donald Trump is a Nazi, then not being a Nazi isn't really so bad anymore. This is the same thing where everyone's a rapist. If everything is rape, if every hookup you've ever had that is just like uncomfortable is rape, then rape is something that, you know, if you go like, oh, okay, whatever the numbers are, like, you know, 1 out of 5 women are raped on college campuses, yet they're all still going there voluntarily and paying lots of money for the privilege to go. I guess rape's not that bad. That's like kind of the next logical conclusion, but actually rape is really fucking horrible. Actually, Nazis are really fucking horrible. It's just they're rare. They're not all over the place. It's better that way. It's better that they're rare. Like, then we have a chance of beating them.